Hi everyone, it's Fiona here. I'm recording a video for you as we get ready to have our first ever get together for the Varshaphal Solar Word of the Year investigation group. You guys are all my patrons on Patreon, and I just wanted to say thank you for supporting me. Your donations help me do my research and create episodes for the Vedic Astrology podcast. And it is in that vein that I had this idea to have an investigation group, because I really want to understand more about Varshaphal. And I think it combines really well with self-discovery as well. So as you know, we're meeting on Saturday. But before we get started, I wanted to record a video about the content, just so that if you have time, you can have a look at it, or if you can't make the meeting, you can check in about the content and give you some background, know what's been going on in my mind about the creation of this experience. So the things that I wanted to cover here in the introductory content was I wanted to talk a little bit about what Varshaphal is, in case you haven't come across it before. And then I want to address that this investigators group that we're in really has two purposes, and in a way, two feeder groups of people who are interested. So I want to really address that and make sure that everybody feels comfortable to be here. And we'll talk just a tiny little bit about group dynamics. I think that'll come up more as we progress deeper into the year. And I also want to get us started on our work already. Even if you're watching this beforehand, I've got things that you can do to get your thoughts ready for our meeting on Saturday. So what is Varshaphal? It is a part of Vedic astrology. So Vedic astrology has in some ways three main schools or origins of its astrology knowledge. We have a very large collection of sutras called Brihat Parashara Horasastra, and that is the foundation of what many, many, many Vedic astrologers are doing. It gives us an outline of the signs, it gives us the houses, it gives us loads of yogas and combinations and all the qualities of the planets. So it's an incredibly vital resource for understanding Vedic astrology. And then there's a second great book of sutras called Jaimini Sutras, which is more encoded and has itself its own explanation of signs and houses and the important ways that the karakas, the planets, can be combined to make material predictions and understanding of what's going on in somebody's life through their birth chart. So we have Brihat Parashara, we have Jaimini, and we also have Varshaphal. And Varshaphal is a system of astrology that acknowledges how important the position of the sun in your birth chart is, because it's really easy, and we do it all the time. We, especially as Westerners, if someone says, "What is your star sign?" we say, "I'm Aries," or "I'm Sagittarius," or "I'm Capricorn," whatever. And what we really mean is my sun is in Capricorn, or my sun is in Libra, whatever our answer to that question was. And we group together all those people and we say, "Oh, these are Libra people," or "These are Gemini people." And we make, in magazines or popular internet posts, we make observations about this based on where your sun is. But when we look at the word for those signs in Vedic astrology, in Sanskrit, the word is Rashi, which means a collection of degrees, because each of those signs is 30 degrees of the ecliptic space, which is what we watch each night when we see the moon tracing its path. During the day, we see the sun tracing its path. This ecliptic is like the highway that all of the planets, as we call them in Vedic astrology, all of the heavenly bodies move along this same superhighway. And that superhighway, because it's a circle from our perspective, more or less, it has 360 degrees. Go back to geometry. Circles have 360 degrees. So as the sun moves through its annual journey through our sky from our perspective, as the sun moves up higher in the sky, moves down lower in the sky, it goes through all of those seasons and changes. It's actually spending 1 day in each degree of those 360 degrees. And this is why we have 364.25 or 365.25 days in our year, right? Because the sun spends a day in each one of these degrees, more or less. So Varshaphal is reminding us of the importance of that exact degree that the sun was at when we were born. Not just that it's in Aries, but is it in the first day of Aries, the second day of Aries, the third day of Aries? And you get the idea all the way through these 360 degrees until we get to the 359th degree of Pisces, and we're back to the 0 degrees of Aries. So Varshaphal is letting us know that this place in the sky where the sun was at the moment of our birth, whatever that degree was, each year as the sun comes back to that exact point, that exact degree, there's a resonance that we can feel because the sun is the closest thing that we can have to understand our soul nature. For everybody, the sun is that pure ball of hydrogen, that pure source of energy, just one element. That's all the sun has, just hydrogen exploding. And just like that in our charts as well, it is our pure essence and it is our inspiration and a guiding light for us in everybody's chart, regardless of what star sign you are or what ascendant you are. So with Varshaphal, we really acknowledge this connection that we have with our orbit around the sun, and that the degree that the orbit was at the time of our birth is significant. And every year we can get an update as to what might be happening in our solar journey by, it's like taking a photograph of where the planets are, the heavenly bodies are, at that moment when the sun returns to our same degree that it was when we were born. And then the astrologer, there's a lot of texts and techniques about how to use that information from that photograph to connect it back to the birth chart and also to understand the qualities and the experience of the coming solar year. So this is a chart that just has a 12-month lifespan. So you need a new one every solar return. You get a new Varshaphal chart, and it is a way for an astrologer to have input into the timing of someone's life. It gives us input as an astrologer. I mean, to be weighing up what might be happening. So when an astrologer is trying to make predictions about timing, we have the birth chart and what the potentials are in the birth chart. We have an ancient system called Vimshatari Dasha based on the position of the moon. And that is unique to Vedic astrology, and it's very well loved in Vedic astrology, very esteemed. However, Vimshatari Dasha system has 120 years of life, and the 9 heavenly bodies are given major chapters in this 120-year book of life. So many of those chapters can be 15, 16, 17, or even 18 years long. And as an astrologer, telling a client that this particular theme will be taking place during the next 18 years perhaps was useful when life was a little slower back in the day. But these days we are so connected to change that it's always handy for an astrologer to have a sense of what is going on in the present moment, exactly at this time. That's what the client is interested in. Now, of course, we also have transits, which is that the heavenly bodies are moving all of the time. So we can use those as an astrologer when we see a particular planet moving into a different Rashi or into connection with a relationship with a planet in the birth chart. We can make some predictions. But Varshaphal is a tool that can be quite accurate for Vedic astrologers. The origin of Varshaphal is a little bit shrouded in the mysteries of time, because not everything survives in a written form and not everything is historically recorded at the time when it comes into use. So we have Varshaphal as a translation from a Persian text that has been available and in constant use, daily use in Vedic astrology for centuries, because Vedic astrology is a long lineage of practice that has not been interrupted, whereas astrology in other parts of the world, because of various changes in culture and various changes in rulerships and kings and wars and occupations and just cultural values, particularly astrology in the West, really suffered from both the Catholic view of astrology, but also the scientific view of astrology. So on both ends of that continuum, it was very difficult in Europe for astrology to have a continuous lineage. But India has not faced that problem, which is not to say that they haven't faced wars and invasions, which do cause problems, and which is why we lose texts, because we do have catastrophic events. But it has continued to be a daily practice, an integrated part of wisdom and culture and health, a part of science, a part of mathematics. Vedic astrology, including Varshaphal, is an everyday, respected, integrated part of cultural life. So we're very lucky to have Varshaphal here in Vedic astrology. I love the origin of the word, which is Varsha can be seen as year, and Phal can be seen as the fruits. So often we would translate it in English as the fruits of the year. But I like that Varsha was a word that meant the beginning of the rainy season. And that's how we can all tell when the year started, when the rains come. And Varshaphal is a bit like that. It has this moment where it starts, the sun coming to that degree, but it's kind of ushering in the energy of the year. And it, as a recipient of this information, it gives us a little hint about energetically what might be going on. And of course, especially as Westerners, I think modern Westerners, we always want good news. We always want support. We always want newness, creativity, a feeling of grace, a feeling of optimism. And that is here in Varshaphal. However, we have to acknowledge that life is a series of ups and downs. And while maybe nobody wants to be foretold that this year might be a little bit more difficult, in some ways what Varshaphal is offering us is that chance to get on the front foot and bolster ourselves and be like, okay, this might be a year where I am empowered to confront some problems that I've been ignoring, or this might be a year where maybe there are some changes in my relationships or my career. And just having a sense that that might be the flavor can perhaps help us to approach that in a more positive way. And because of that, then even if there are difficult things, we see them in the context of our whole lifetime journey. And for those of you who followed me, right from the beginning as a life coach coming into Vedic astrology, I love to talk to people about the hero's journey. And it's one of the analogies that I'm going to be using here with Varshaphal. That hero's journey has its great peaks and it has its troughs as well. So Varshaphal may highlight for you that this year is more graceful or it's more difficult. And that just reflects the truth of human experience, that we're all going through changes. We're all interacting with reality. And in the year that we spend together here examining and investigating Varshaphal, I will be contextualizing all of those. If there are challenges and obstacles, we're going to look at how we can be ready to face and address those. So let's move on to have a look at the two purposes of this group, that we are investigating Varshaphal on one level and we are also pursuing self-discovery. So these are two quite, in some ways, can seem like distinct, different purposes, but I actually think they're really integrated together. And I want to address it right up front because I'm concerned that some people, if they've come from the self-discovery side, might feel like, oh, I'm not really equipped to do any investigation of Varshaphal. Or the people who are interested in investigating Varshaphal more deeply might feel like, oh, do I want to reveal my self-discovery to others? So let's get that up on the table, front and center. So as you know, this group for the patrons is called Investigators. And that's because I know that many of my followers, people who listen to the Vedic Astrology podcast, are interested in astrology. They do have some existing knowledge of astrology, or they are students. They're active students of Vedic astrology, or they're even practitioners. So welcome to everybody who has come from a background with some existing knowledge in astrology. From this direction, from this purpose, what this group is really about to me is, what if we take a year and we really investigate how Varshaphal plays out? Because many of us have learned a little something about Varshaphal, or if you've been lucky enough to take Laura Bharat's Varshaphal course, which is an online course which I thoroughly recommend, you've got this knowledge about Varshaphal, but we need to implement it. We need to get our hands dirty, get in the sandpit and play with it, because when you learn from a master, everything seems to click. It all makes sense. We feel good about it. It's crystal clear. And then we can struggle to apply that ourselves. So we want to practice. We want to actually get used to these terminologies. So for people who do have an existing knowledge of Varshaphal, you might know something called a Muntha, but have you had a chance to really play with that and see how it applies? You might know about the year lord, the strongest lord in the Varshaphal chart, the strongest heavenly body. You might know that there is an ascendant in the Varshaphal chart, and you know that it's linked back to the birth chart. But let's really investigate and practice that. Does it work? Does it really work? And how useful is it? So what I'm offering here is a chance to, if you do know something about Varshaphal, it's a chance to practice and deepen your practice, and to do that in a group of people who are willing to share their charts, so that not only are you investigating your own chart, which may be helpful, but you've got a bunch of people who are also looking at their chart and reflecting on and thinking about it. So we'll be able to see lots of different iterations and different combinations of Munthas and year lords and where the ascendant lord goes, all of those things that we're interested in investigating. And we'll have a live group that we can make some predictions about what the year will be like, and we'll have people that we can really say, yes, that made sense to me, or no, it didn't. So that's why it's an investigation. We're really trying it out. And then perhaps there's another group of people that are coming to this meeting, coming to this group to explore Varshaphal for the purpose of self-discovery. You're interested in what's going on energetically at that unique person level, at that solar level. And you want to use that as a tool to be effective in setting goals for the year, and also in having a talisman or a mantra or a lighthouse that is going to help guide you through any of those troubling or difficult phases. So as we go through this year, looking at Varshaphal might be a way to tap into the energy of the year and allow us to focus our energy on the things where there is energetic support, and perhaps also have an understanding of things that don't work out, or things that one puts one's effort into that just don't seem to go anywhere in this year or last year. So, and really this self-discovery side for all of us is a chance to use Varshaphal as a tool. And in the past, I've run many women's groups where we have chosen a word of the year as a motivational, talisman or mantra, something that is simple and short, but allows us to have an anchor to what it is that we want to remain true to during all of the cut and thrust of the year. Now, often when we've done Word of the Year, we've used a technique of vision boarding where you just allow yourself to be open as you leaf through magazines and you cut out any images that seem to speak to you or resonate with you. And then you put these images together in groups and you put them eventually on a board and you kind of stand back and look at it and you realize, wow, I've chosen a lot of images of children, or I've chosen a lot of images of vacations and getting away, or of food and nourishment, or of challenges like rock climbing and whitewater rafting, whatever. People often amazed at what they put on their own vision board. And from that, we distill it down to a word, and then it becomes a theme for the year. And we meet as a group and we, one by one, go through each of these themes. So rather than doing vision board this year, I want to do Varshaphal. So as well as all the investigation that we're doing and all the astrology that we're doing, what I want to do with each person in the group is provide for you the information from the Varshaphal that can help you intuit a word for the year or a short mantra talisman that will guide you through the year. Now, this is not a logical thing. Just like vision boards, it's not logical. And especially if you haven't been exposed to astrology before, you may find that astrology can be quite contradictory. And that can be frustrating because it's so non-logical and our brains can be a little bit habituated to something having a pattern and to locking that down and just having one theme. That would be really easy. And that may happen. There are some years where everything lines up together. But often with astrology, there are contradictory themes. So on one hand, you'll be told it's a great year to go ahead and start something new. And then on another indicator, you'll be told it's time to turn within and withdraw from the world and solidify your inner sense of security or something. So what I want to ask you right at the beginning is just to relax around the non-logical nature of this work. Just like when we're doing the vision board and we have images, they might be contradictory. And you may find on your vision board, if you've ever done one, that it kind of, there are clumps. There's a top left-hand corner is all about the home and the renovations that you want to do. And you might find that the bottom right-hand corner is all about travel and different places that have got nothing to do with the house renovation. And you might have, something over in the bottom left-hand corner that's all about reading or, fireplaces and this kind of really cozy feel. So we are rich humans, rich beings, and it is okay that as we go through this process of finding our word of the year, there might be some non-logical moments and we don't have to get frustrated about those. We can just notice them and just sit with them and allow that to be in our awareness and perhaps realize that there's something important there in between those two opposites or two contradictory directions. There's something really important. So we want to relax about it. And also just don't worry if you don't have astrological knowledge and someone says something about Mercury or we're talking about the sign of Libra and you feel like, oh, maybe I'm in the wrong group. Just relax about that as well, because Vedic astrology is many things. Astrology is many things. And one of them is a language. And just allow that language to float in your awareness. Don't feel in any way that you need to be an expert in astrology to take value from this process. Just like when we're doing a vision board, I'm not an expert photographer and I'm not an expert art critic and I'm not an expert psychologist who uses imagery with her clients. I'm just a person who resonates with particular images and I put them together in a way that makes sense to me. And that's what we're going to do with astrology, is just be inspired. And what is inspired in you is the most important thing. There's no right, wrong, that maybe I don't understand Mercury, so my inspiration about Mercury is incorrect, whereas those astrologers know what they're talking about. I don't want that approach at all. If you hear something about Mercury or something about Aries or something about a house that resonates with you and inspires you, go with that and feel into that, because that's what's important. So those insights are going to provide for us the focus for the year. So that sums up these two groups. And some of you are going to be hard on the astrologer side, like that's your main interest. And some are going to be hard on the self-discovery side, having had no exposure to astrology before we get together today. And then there's a whole bunch of us who are in the middle. We know something about astrology. We have some interest in our own goals and direction for the year. So we're in a continuum together, and it's okay if you're hard at one end or the other, or if you're somewhere in the middle. Please don't worry. You're exactly who I want to be here, and your place is here this year. So we are going to learn so much from each other. The astrologers are going to learn from the non-astrologers, and the non-astrologers are going to learn from the astrologers. So I really know that at the end of this process, we will have learned so much from each other. Now, let's look at a little bit of a timeline overall. That normally when I run a Word of the Year group, we spend one meeting doing the vision board, and then we spend another meeting reporting back about the vision board. And from that, we would have every person's Word of the Year. So normally that takes 2 meetings, 2 months. In this case, I'm thinking it will probably take 3. So in this very first meeting in July, I want to cover an introduction to Varshaphal, what we're doing today. I want to give you an understanding of your progressed ascendant, the Muntha. That's what we're going to start working on. And I also want to begin this investigative process of reflecting on the cycles in your life, this 12-year reflection exercise. So those are all the things that we're going to begin with: reflecting on your 12-year cycles and a look at your progressed ascendant. Then when we get together next month, I would like to look at the year lord. So we're going to bring in a planet and look at the strongest planet in the Varshaphal for you this year and see what that means to people. And then I think we'll need a third meeting as well. So our final meeting in summer are looking at the ascendant of the Varshaphal chart. So there is so much valuable information in the Varshaphal chart that will help us create our mantra for the year, our word of the year. And it's just going to take us a little time to delve deeper and deeper into that. We're going to sort of do it step by step in these 3 main chunks. We're going to have the Muntha first, which is the link to the birth chart. We're going to have the year lord second, which is the strongest planet. And then we're going to look at the ascendant of the Varshaphal. By putting all of those together, we should have a lot of rich input into our word of the year. And that will be sort of wrapping up by the end of that September meeting, honing in on for each person what that word is, what that person is excited to focus on for the year. And then as we go forward after that, as we move into Northern Hemisphere autumn and we meet once a month, we will focus on one person's word of the year, because all of us want to grow regardless of our own individual charts. We're growing as a group. So we'll have a chance to examine everybody's word of the year. And also we'll have a chance for those of us on the astrology side to just get a bit more tick-tacky about timing, because we're going to get a chance to see each other every month. We can look at some of the yogas that we think are happening in that month, or some of the time periods, get some feedback from all of us about what the timing is like. So I'm putting up this slide to let us know that the first part is going to take 2 to 3 meetings to understand what your word of the year is. And we're all so fast and rapid these days. We want to get everything all in one go. But we're just going to take our time and add these layers one at a time. And that's also because we want to understand what's going on for everybody. There are going to be, at the moment, there's 8 to 9 people. I'm allowing up to 12 people. So it's going to take a little while for everybody to report back what is going on for them. And And that also helps us understand the richness of life, of everybody's journey. So this is our draft timeline. And then I just wanted to say right here at the beginning, a short something about the importance of group dynamics, because this is a group where we are exploring ourselves. We are exploring what is important to us energetically in this birthday year. It is naturally a vulnerable space. And the more that we can share, the more we're going to get out of it. And to do that, we need to make sure that we create a safe space where everybody's contributions valued and respected. And that when we demonstrate that to each other, it allows people to relax and share a little bit more. So I'm always guided and inspired by non-violent communication. It's super simple. We really want to open our heart to what is alive in me. That's one of the main things that we're doing in a group like this. We're using Varshaphal to open our hearts to what is alive in me at the moment. What am I feeling? And what am I needing? So I encourage you, as you participate in the group, to be open to your own heart center and to observe what is coming up, what is alive for you as we go through this. And just notice when any judgments come up in the self that I shouldn't be feeling this, or I'm not as good as everybody else, or I'm scared to share this, whatever it is that's coming up. Just sit with that. Notice that that is arising in the heart center and have compassion for our own experience of being human. And that's right here at the bottom. That's like humanizing our own judgments, noticing that even I myself judge myself. So we just have compassion for that when that occurs. We're all human. And I also want to encourage you to open your heart to what is coming alive to the other members of the group as well. That helps when we have our hearts open, it helps open other people's hearts. So each one of us in this group is going to be experiencing things becoming alive into our awareness. And some of those things are easy and graceful, and some of them are unpleasant or difficult. So when we notice listening to other people, we can be asking ourselves, I wonder what that other person is feeling. I wonder what that other person is needing. And we can't know those things, but we can be open, have our stance as being open to that information. And if we notice judgment coming up, that we are having judgments about another person, about their approach, maybe they're stuck, or maybe they're repeating themselves, or maybe they're lost or frustrated. As we notice that, and maybe there's a judgmental feeling that comes up inside of us, it's a chance for us to connect with our own heart space again and ask, what is coming up for me? What is coming alive to me as I notice this resistance in myself, this judgment in myself? So rather than leaping into extroverting our judgment, so let's not do that where possible. And also, let's not leap into fixing people and giving advice and telling people what they should do. Let's listen to what is coming up inside the self as we notice a resistance to what someone else is sharing. And then either we have that compassion for the self and others, that we know how difficult it is to be human, or we have that empathy that everybody's doing the very best that they can. We're all not perfect. That's one thing is for sure. And how lovely it is to be on this journey with other people who are also in the process of coming alive to themselves and are not perfect. So this is something that will come up more as we get into that ongoing phase of the group and we're sharing more freely. I think as we do the first part of the setting the word of the year, we might be so involved in the content that there won't be that much reflection on the group dynamics. But I think it's important to have that intention from the beginning to be open in the heart space, open to the self and open to others. So I really look forward to growing this group dynamic with you. Right. So that's a little bit of all of our setup for our meeting on Saturday. Now, in terms of content for Saturday, the thing that we're going to start looking at is the idea that we are going through cycles in life. And this comes up in astrology so much. And that's why astrology is such a useful analogy for life, because these heavenly bodies move in cycles around us. So we know that the moon moves around and goes through all of its phases once every month. In fact, it only ever spends around 2.5 days in each of those zodiac signs. So it is the fastest moving and most changeable heavenly body that we can see with our naked eye. It's something that all humans for all time have been watching, the beautiful changing moon. And we know, as we talked about with Varshaphal, that the sun goes through, from our perspective, this annual journey. It takes the 365 days of the year, and it spends a month in each one of these zodiac signs. So the moon spends 2.5 days and goes around and around and around and around in a year. The sun does one complete cycle in a year and spends a month in each of these zodiac signs. And then we have all of these other heavenly bodies, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter. They all take their own time to go through their cycles. And right at the visible end of that spectrum is Saturn. And it takes the longest to go around this cycle. And people who don't know anything about astrology often know about a Saturn return, which is that around about every 30 years, the Saturn returns to where it was in your birth chart. So we've got the sun returning once a year, and Saturn is going to take around 30 years to get that one rotation in. So it's natural that we mark time in cycles, and the Saturn return is so well known because those periods like turning 30 and turning 60, and if we're lucky enough, turning 90, these mark great epochs in our lifetime. So it's not an unusual suggestion that life moves in cycles. What Varshaphal puts front and center for us is the idea of a 12-year cycle, that each year of our life, as we go through this solar journey, we are exploring one of the astrological houses. And the houses for me are the hero's journey that we're all on, this quest that we're on. And so the first house is the beginning of something. As we go through house 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way through to 11 and 12, we're coming to the end of a cycle. We're completing something. So at its very simplest level, without getting any astrological software at all, we could say that the first year of life from 0 to 12 months of age is connected to the first house. And then from 1 year of age to 2 years, that's something to do with the second house. And our third year of life is something to do with the third house. And it keeps going on a whole cycle until in that 12th year, we are experiencing once again the beginning of a new cycle. So one of the tasks that I want us to undertake in our investigation is to reflect back on our own lives and see, can we observe anything in this 12-year pattern? And we might and we might not. So don't feel any pressure to skew your results to reflect this 12-year cycle or not. And because I'm going to explain to you the complexities of the 12-year cycle, but let's first of all look at the simplicity of the 12-year cycle. And I think ideally, if one was to explore that, it would be great to use a diagram like this and begin to observe here when I was 0, what sort of things happened. Write down the year that was that you were 0, and, anything that happened in this year when from 1 to 2, write down the year of the calendar that was, and any big events that happened between 1 and 2, and keep going around and around so that we could begin to see patterns. I think this would be amazing. But my computer skills and drawing skills are not really up to creating that as a tool for you. However, I really want you to encourage you through this whole process to create your own tools in your own way. Get out a pen and paper and draw as much as possible because it connects you with your intuitive brain. So if you had the skills to draw this on paper, please go ahead and make your reflections on what events have occurred in your life in this circular spiral kind of a way. You might be even clever enough to draw this as a spiral rather than all of these circles. But for those who are more linear and don't have the skills to draw in a circle, I'm going to send you a couple of draft ideas of some kind of journal where you could reflect on your 12 years. So for each person, I have tailored this so that when you're age 0 and it's the first house, when you get your own copy, it has your year here. And then just on this side, you could just begin jotting down the major events that happened for you that you can remember at particular ages in your life. And I've put some ideas here that perhaps a sibling was born when you were 2, perhaps you moved house when you were 3, perhaps you started school when you were 4. These are just ideas. Everybody's life is slightly different and slightly the same. So just jot down in here, like every time you moved house, every time you bought a house, every time you moved country, every time you got married, every time you got divorced, every time you had a breakup, every time you got a new job, every time you left a job, like just start to populate this with events that you can remember. Car accidents or broken bones, trips to hospital, health emergencies, losses, deaths of loved ones, parents, friends, great achievements when you got your university education or when you got certified in something like a residency for those of us who live here. Anything that comes to mind, just maybe print this out, have it on your desk, and as you think of things over the next week or so, just write them down in the appropriate year or age, depending on what makes sense to you more. The year date or the age date is what you remember. Once you've got a few things, populated in here, if there's any patterns that you notice that every time it's a first house year, you seem to start a new job or move country or start a new relationship, or it marked a watershed time in your life. Or maybe you notice every time it's a 6th year that there was a health issue that came up, or that you spent time in hospital, or that someone that you know had health difficulties. I don't know what you will find. But if you begin to notice any patterns, you can sort of note down here what sort of things happened in the 5th house years. And then I've just given you some space to just make some general notes over here. Now, I would suggest writing these out by hand. So just write it out on a piece of paper if you want, print this off and do it that way. If you want to do it on the computer, you can do it on the computer. Let's all of us investigate what are these 12-year cycles really like and really about. So that is some homework that you can get started on straight away before we even meet on Saturday. And like I say, I would love you to design your own. I've put together 2 or 3 versions. I'm just going to give them to you. Use one of those if you want to, or don't. Just create your own. The best would be to create your own, obviously. And then when we actually meet on Saturday, I want to begin this first step of looking at our progressed ascendant. And this is how the Varshaphal chart links back to the birth chart, because we really do need to read them together. And this is something that we can progress through as the year goes by. So don't worry if you haven't read your chart yet. We can start wherever you are. But for each person, we're going to pop in here your birth chart and then look at the most recent Varshaphals. So I have put mine in here. I'm a December baby. So I'm actually 5 days before the end of the year. So mine says 2021 Varshaphal because for most of that Varshaphal year, it's actually 2022. And then, So for you, when you see yours, this will probably say 2022 Varshaphal. The first bottom one will be 2023 Varshaphal, and the final one will be 2024 Varshaphal. But for me, the exception to the rule that I'm at the end of the year, so it doesn't make much sense to have a look at the going forward so far into the future when my current one, starts at the end of the previous year. So you will have these individualized for your own situation. And then in our very first meeting, we're going to talk about the hero's journey. We're going to look at all of us, everybody's house system, and understand this great quest that we're on that has highs and lows, that has self-doubt, achievement, plumbing the depths of our insecurities, confronting great battles, going on long journeys. It has all of those elements of our epics like Star Wars and Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. All of these kind of stories share the same sort of themes. We are going to explain that hero's journey and look at where your progressed ascendant is. So Varshaphal gives us a chance to see which one of those steps in the hero's journey is being emphasized this year. And that's the 12-year cycle that everybody's on. So it's consecutive. And so if you look at mine in what was my Varshaphal for 2021 that I experienced mostly in the year 2022, I was in a second house progression. And then now in the current year, I'm in a third house, and in the coming up year, I'll be in a fourth house. So this for you, we will put along the top. But what I will share with you on Saturday, and where each of these 12 years actually gets a very unique flavor, is that the Varshaphal puts that progressed ascendant somewhere in the Varshaphal house system. And we're going to, you can see that is not consecutive. So for 1 year, it was in the third house. For another year, it was in the fifth house. And for the coming year, it'll be in the 11th house. So these are not consecutive. The top row always is, the second row is not. But we would take these for the year that we're interested in creating a mantra. We would take our progressed ascendant as it is in the birth chart. That's my, in this example, third house, which is the third house is all about testing out new skills, learning by doing, and through courage and adventure. It's a very exploratory house. And that is what is being emphasized for me because I am in the third year of a new cycle. So I'm here to explore and to gain skills. However, in my Varshaphal chart, and I will explain all of this to you, so don't worry that at the moment you don't know the answer to this, my progressed ascendant is actually in the fifth house. So that fifth house is all about creativity. It's about wealth, children, marriage, higher education, and it's a beneficial year because it's a trine in astrology. We love the numbers 1, 5, and 9. This is a trinal house, so it's considered to be beneficial. So in terms of beginning to understand my mantra for the year, I want to combine what does 3 and 5 mean to me? So I'm asking these questions. Ideas, what does it mean? So I just wrote learning by doing in making something new that's on my new pathway. So I'm being creative and I'm exploring. And that's what the potential word combinations may be: courageous, creative exploration. Now that might be enough. Maybe you walk away with that and that's your mantra for the year. And I have to say that's a pretty good mantra for my year. That's certainly what I'm experiencing. I can tell you all about it when we get together. But there's a lot of flavor to add, but this is maybe one of those core elements of what's going to be your word of the year. And just some other thought prompts here, potential approach. Maybe this helps me in this year. My approach could be around trying new things and feeling free to create things. And then where does this fit in my life? It's at the beginning of a new cycle. So I'm still exploring the possibilities. This is my draft way of filling out this table. On Saturday, when we get together, we're going to start this process together for your chart. Now, we have many people, so we're just going to have a quick check that we know how to do this for each person. And then in this month, between this Saturday meeting and our next meeting, is your time to fill out this table and reflect on what the core themes are about for you in relation to your progressed ascendant. This is just step one of our design process. Because you'll have the month to reflect on it, I'm adding in here the previous year. So I'd love you to fill that out, and the coming year. So you're going to get 3 Varshaphal charts to work with. And why I'm including the previous year is so you know what last year was like. And you can reflect on that last birthday year and decide if that makes sense to you, that it was a 12th house year or a 4th house year or a 5th house year. So it's always great astrology to learn is to reflect back on the experience that you've already had. And I am including the coming year as well. And that is because for some of us, we may be very close to a birthday already. And that is one of the moving feasts of this particular group. So we are doing a lot in this group at the same time. That's why I want us all to relax and allow that intuition to be there. It doesn't have to be logical. It doesn't have to be cause and effect. There's going to be a lot of inputs and something meaningful is going to occur for you. And it might be something that somebody else says. It might be these 2 numbers that suddenly make a lot of sense to you. It might be the hero's journey that really hits for you. It could be anything or everything. So there's going to be a lot going on. There's going to be a lot of stimulation, one of which is that the solar year is different for everybody. The planet's solar year starts at Aries when the sun's rays come to the equator for the first time on their journey north if you live in the northern hemisphere. That is when, for the planet, the sun returns to primavera, to the first turn, to the first time. And so that's one date for everybody, the first degree of Aries. But for all of us individual people, our Varshaphal is starting at our own unique time period. So I've shared with you my birthday is December. So for the most of the time that I'm working with this group, I'm going to be looking at one particular Varshaphal. And then come January, I'll be starting a new Varshaphal chart. Meanwhile, each 8, 9, 10, 11 members are going to be doing that transition at their own pace as well. So your word of the year fits into a journey that you're experiencing. And that's why I've got the 3 streams here on this table, that I know that there's a lot of change. I want us to see it in the course of our overall hero's journey. So all of this is going to become much clearer when we get started together on Saturday, but this is just to give you a background to know what it is that I'm expecting to cover on Saturday and what your homework will be from meeting 1 to meeting 2. It'll be filling out this table here. Great. Now, some questions. I will cover these live with you it's much better that I do them on Saturday when they are your actual questions. Of course, a couple of questions that come to mind straight away are what I've already shared with you. What if your solar return, say we get together now in July and your birthday is actually in August? So as I just shared, I'm very happy that we're all on journeys, and let's look at our word of the year as transitioning through that journey. So if your birthday is happening very soon, I will be helping you make sure that you feel comfortable with that transition. And don't worry, each of us is going to change birthdays during this year. So we're all on a journey. The Varshaphal is, in one level, it's a point in time, but on another level, it's just part of our whole quest. And then if you don't have any pre-existing knowledge of astrology or Vedic astrology, no problems. Relax. Probably sometimes some of the conversation is going to sound insane. Just keep breathing. Don't worry about it. There's something about the language of astrology that resonates with humans, because whatever culture you look at through history has always looked up at the night sky and has always linked their mythology with the movement of the stars. So there's like in our DNA, there are these deep connections to the mythological stories that we project out onto the stars. And somewhere in your DNA is going to resonate with this, even if at times you might think it's a bit crazy. So I'm just asking you, if you don't have any astrological knowledge, just relax, don't worry about it, and be a little bit forgiving, open, and patient if sometimes it seems a bit woohoo or strange. And obviously, this space, I'm open to what your actual questions are. When we get together on Saturday, please feel free to ask. Every question is valuable because someone else is probably thinking it and hasn't had a chance to ask it yet. So if you have a chance to watch this video before Saturday, please jot down your questions. I'd be happy to answer them. I am so excited to get this group started. I really think Varshaphal has so much potential. I want to learn how to use it better. I want to see how it can inspire each of us, including me, on our journey, and what we can gain from this ancient system of Vedic and Persian astrology. So thanks for joining me on the journey, and I can't wait to be with you on Saturday. Okay, I look forward to seeing all of your homework, if you've had any chance to do it, about your 12-year reflections, and I can't wait to share with you the material that I've prepared about your own charts. Okay, bye everyone. See you on Saturday.